Are we ready? And that's my camera. Okay, let's go. So let's talk about your green card strategy today. We want to keep things short and concise here. Let's look at the timeline of things from your graduation. There is the OPT period, which is up to 3 years. It will be 1 year if you're just, considered for OPT without the STEM option. If you have the STEM option, then you have additional 2 years, which brings us to 3 years. There's a H1B option if you are sponsored, and we're going to be looking at your long-term career as well. Some of the potential blockers here, without a green card, is that your job opportunities will be limited in the post OPT period because you do not have like a permanent residency or permanent work authorization. Your dependency on employer for sponsorship is also going to be very significant for the H1B visa. And also, there's a lot of uncertainty as regards planning your long term career. This restricts your mobility as your career is concerned, and also entrepreneurship opportunities are really, really limited. Even if you might be able to, register a company, start a business, you personally would not be able to work in that company because you don't have work authorization. But you can hire people, and I imagine that the average person does not have the amount of cash needed to just start hiring people from the start. Some of the key insights here will be that only 33% of MBA students in top US programs are international, and that's just a snapshot of data for you to be able to think around how things look. OPT allows you to work for up to 3 years post graduation. H1B, the sponsorship is competitive and is not guaranteed. So the green card provides you with a long-term stability. The green card provides you with a long-term stability and career flexibility. So that's very helpful to know. And here, when it comes to best practices to filing a green card, looking at the EB2 NIW, which you can file without a job offer, and the EB1A as well, which highlights your extraordinary ability. What are the best practices? I would say number one, hands down, is to hire an attorney. Right? Attorneys are very, very crucial when it comes to this process. They understand the process. They understand the law better. They can interpret it. They have experiences with cases that are like your case. They can help you compile your documentation. They can give advice in that space. They can advocate on your behalf, and also, like I said, they are very updated on immigration laws. So no questions here, no arguments here. Attorneys are the best direction to go when it comes to thinking about the best practice to file your green card. And here are some of the advantages or pros of hiring an attorney. Like I mentioned in the last slide, the expertise and the knowledge. They do have the expertise and knowledge. Legal terms can be very stressful to understand, and they have higher approval rates, especially because they have that badge of honor or that authority to stamp on the application and say, "Hey, this is coming from us," and filing on behalf of this person, right? For time efficiency on the side of the applicant yourself, it's an advantage here because you don't have to spend a lot of time on anything. So uh, the attorneys handle those things for you, and they can advocate on your behalf. If your application is denied, attorneys can assist with appeals and things like that. Now, from attorney to attorney, it differs, right? If they would charge you some extra money for appealing your case or things like that, you might have to speak to your attorney to understand how they work and what are the best practices. And are there any cons to hiring an attorney? Yes, there are, depending on your perspective and how you're seeing the whole process, right? So for attorneys, there's a high cost of filing. And if you're someone who has like a limited budget or a very humble budget, this can be a very, very big con for you. Uh, Depending on what attorney, which city, or, what kind of experience or their success rates, their charges range from attorney to attorney, but I know that is significantly high. You can verify that, or ask some of your colleagues who have done any filing before now. And also, you have very, very moderate control on the narrative of your story that is being told, how your case is being put out there. Also, from a perspective of understanding your culture and who you are, I like to give a good example here all the time to say, as an African, for example, you're applying for the EB1A, and they're saying that you need to have awards, internationally acclaimed awards or national awards. You don't have none of those, but you have like one of the first class monarchs in your country has blessed you traditionally in the open. How do you communicate that? From an African perspective, that's even bigger than an international award, and that's a big deal. So, how do you help USCIS understand the impact of that award and why that award is important? That story must be told in a way that you must understand, the basics and that culture to be able to pass it to someone else. And if you don't have a lot of control on your storytelling and also, understand the story, you might not be able to do a good job there. The USCIS might be making decisions based on an incomplete story or a story that is not well told. There's also variable quality when it comes to attorneys. Attorneys, differ when it comes to their skills and experience and success rate. They vary from attorney to attorney. So some of the things you want to consider and ensure that you're looking at that when you're hiring an attorney. And lastly, to talk about the advocacy, when it comes to advocacy as well, that's one thing you want to look into as well. Is there like an extra charge there, or is that all part of the package? And when we talk about advocacy, we're looking at when there's a denial, when you're supposed to appeal or file for the case to be reopened, or the posts approval processes, filing adjustment of status and things like that. Are there extra charges there? Those are some areas that you want to be very, very clear about. And when it comes to time, if the attorney actually has multiple clients, there may be delays in communicating with them or processing your application. That's something you should keep in mind when you're thinking to work with attorneys, so that you can, bring all those data points together and factor them in when you're communicating with them or when you're working with them. Yeah, I bet you already have been thinking about this. Like, can I file it myself? Can you file yourself? Yes, you can file these cases yourself. It allows you manage your application independently. These are some of the areas that you will be looking at as you file this case yourself. You must understand that research is going to be very, very intense, especially because this is not a space that you play every day. So you must research, you must understand properly what you're doing. Secondly, compiling your documentation can be challenging and complex. Understanding what documentation to put together, which ones are better than the others, how to actually compile them in such a way that they're telling a story is one more thing you want to ensure that you are clear about. Completing the forms as well can be complex. You can make some sort of errors there if you do not know what they're talking about. Be in some communities where you can understand if there is a new regulation that impacts your candidacy or that impacts your category. Some of the advantages will be the control over cost, right? Because you're not paying any professional fees. The only cost that you'll be thinking about will be the cost of filing with the USCIS. So that's really low compared to what you would have paid if you were working with an attorney. You have full personal control as well on the narrative, the story, the timeline of filing, not the timeline post filing. All of those things you have control over. And if you're also someone who enjoys to learn, you will find the learning experience interesting because you will learn some new things about yourself as you begin to research how to file this case. You will listen to some of the pros, and let's move on to the cons. Yes, there are also some cons with self filing, which we should look into here. First thing first is, that complexity can bring a lot of confusion. It's a really complex case. to file. Either one of them, the EB2 or the EB1, they're both complex cases to file. And why is that? There are different aspects of the case, subs of different aspects that can just be very challenging to sit down and ensure that everything is structured. Um, for each piece of it, it might look straightforward, but once you start trying to connect the dots and trying to do a good job, it becomes really, really challenging to wrap your head around it, especially if you have a day job while you're doing that, or if you are still in school while you're doing that, it can be really complex. Second is it can be very time consuming because as you continue to focus, you probably want to do a lot of research. You want to ensure that the data that you're pulling together to support some of your claims are verifiable. And when you do all of that, it's really time consuming. Also, to begin to put your own story in a format that someone who knows you from nowhere can easily empathize and understand your background. Also, you want to be breaking down your professional jargons into terms that every Tom, Dick, and Mariah can understand. So that can really be very time consuming when you do things like that, and you write, you review, you ask a third party to read to check for simplicity. Also, there's the risk of errors, which is very high because it's a really complex case, taking you from one aspect to another aspect, trying to plug stories together, trying to describe impact and second order impact. And you might also misinterpret some terms or some instructions. At times, these legal terms can sound like something else when you read them. And I can go into examples or do a whole video on that. But what I'm saying today is that, while self filing can be a great thing to do, you can feel empowered. It's also challenging and it requires careful consideration and preparation before you go ahead and do this. And as you know, problem solving sits at the core of our strategy at Lead 54. So, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to ensure that we bridge the gap that we found in this niche where people want all of the advantages of filing with an attorney, uh, but then they don't want all of the adversaries that come with filing yourself, which is the reason why we're partnering with some consultants out there to create an approach where you don't have to be alone. You can go ahead and file with an expert hand holding you, and your budget can still be very humble, and you can achieve the kind of results that you want to achieve. The name of that environment is called the Task Tribe, where, as you can see on the screen, the pros in each of those scenarios, either the attorney or self filing, are brought together and the cons are taken out of the context. So now we are combining the advantages and offering individuals control of their own immigration applications while ensuring that an expert is hand holding them through the process. This is the perfect blend. Task Tribe, being able to bring all the good things of both styles of filing and bringing them into one in a custom approach. Now, with all of these advantages here, you will be able to leverage your humble budgets for a job that is well done, that is going to be controlled by yourself. You will file yourself, you will build the case yourself, of course, in the midst of others, and led by experts, led by consultants who will ensure that they handhold you through every part of the process. Low cost, you have full personal control on your story. The quality will be great. Advocacy, you will now be able to advocate for yourself because you know and you understand what's expected. Every part of the case will be broken down to you before we get into sessions where you're building your own case. Expertise and knowledge is present, especially in a place where you have a number of MBAs led by a knowledgeable consultant. So expertise and knowledge is not going to be a stranger in that space. Higher approval rates, definitely. Time efficiency and tailored approach will be put together, especially because not only have you learned every part of the case and broken down to you in a way that you understand what to do, we have a custom made AI powered tool that is made for this purpose itself that will be improving your productivity by a lot, right? So, not a lot of effort, but 100% and more when it comes to the clarity and the quality of the output. So, yeah. Now let's look at the roadmap. What does it look like being in the task tribe? What it looks like is that you will get in the parking lot. The initial community is a place we call the parking lot, just to ensure that you can connect with the idea better. This is a place where we will all start from and begin to get on our documentation journey. You will have presentations breaking down each part of the case and what kind of documentation that you should be thinking about putting together. You probably think you have your documentation game together already, but wait till you get into that space and you begin to find out, what kind of documents are really, really expected, and how should you really, tell a story using the documentation that you have. So in the parking lot, it will happen 2 hours on Saturday, 2 hours on Sunday for 2 weekends. During the week, there will be a group chat where iron can sharpen iron. You can drop questions in there. Your co-applicants can also respond and ask questions. The idea is to ensure that the consultant is answering a question, and everybody can carry along with those responses. So on the next phase will be the cohort phase, which we have termed the highway, where we will get into the cohort sessions. What that looks like is on Saturday there will be a 2-hour session where the consultant will do a presentation in a way that everybody understands the nitty gritty of that particular aspect of the case that we're trying to file on that day. And once you understand every part of that aspect, you can ask questions and ensure that everybody is clear. And then we will move on to begin to build our own case with the consultant in that cohort as well, hand holding you guys through the process. Now, the good thing about this is you're not going to be doing things manually. Each person will have access to a custom AI build tool that will enable you not only build a good story, but ensure that all aspects of your profile is considered when drafting anything, to ensure as well that as these drafts are going on, the policies of the USCIS is kept as a benchmark towards drafting these things. And that's going to happen for 3 weekends: 2 Saturdays, 2 hours on Saturday, 2 hours on Sunday, and those are going to happen for 3 weekends. And finally, we're going to have a completion session where there'll be a final review, where we can also look into RFEs. Those that might have RFEs. It's not only about the power of your application. There are other things that the USCIS will consider. There are also unwritten. There's some unwritten and unsaid rules that you might be able to find out when you get into the cohort, where this is the stage where we handle all of that. So on Saturday we have 2 hours, on Sunday we have 2 hours. The presentation is done. You can ask questions and then you can build your own case, and that's going to happen for just 1 weekend. Now, how do you get in touch with us? How you get in touch will be that there will be information in the description of this post, in the caption, and also there will be a link in our bio where you can begin to take control of your own future. I would say that if you listen or you research and you see that you have the requirements to hit either the EB2 or the EB1A, I think and you're still a student, I think that you can get on the journey in time, just so that the job opportunities that you will have access to are not going to pass you by when that time comes for you to start applying. At least you'll be able to leverage other people's stories, success stories, and work with co-applicants and ensure that you're doing the right thing.